We love being here, and you spoil us, and we're just thankful to be here. And thank you for the love that you show us and my family. So thank you. Awkward transition. Here we go. We're going to jump into, I never fully know what to say. We love you. We love you guys. We are in week number 2 today of the elephant in the room. So what we're doing is we're just trying to unpack some of these different topics that are kind of the tension-filled, sensitive topics that maybe we don't like to talk about, but are very present in the church and in the room with us. And so today we are talking about friendships. And on some level, we could maybe make the argument, well, that's not an elephant in the room. Like, we all have friends and they're all good and all that. But the reality is that, say that, for many of us, we have had friendships in our lives for possibly all of our lives. And I know some of us have not been alive as long as others. I'm just kidding. Huh? I'm looking where? Hey, I stare at the back wall. That back wall is where I lock eyes. We make eye contact all the time. Here's the reality. Like for some of us, we have had friends for all of our lives, but at some point, we made a decision to get serious about our relationship with Jesus, didn't we? And sometimes the trajectory of our friendship with Jesus pulling us maybe this way, sometimes it gets tense because the trajectory that our friends are on are not matching the trajectory that we feel called to go on as believers and followers of Jesus. And that presents a tension. It presents kind of an awkwardness at times because we don't necessarily want to break off the relationship. We don't necessarily know what to do at all, but we do know for certain God's calling us a different direction. He's calling us to sometimes make changes. And so we want to unpack that a little bit today. I don't know if you're like me, but early on in life, I didn't necessarily choose my friends, necessarily. Like, we lived out in the country, so there was really no neighbor next door. But like our friends, our kids have friends across the street simply because of proximity is why we're friends with them. The other influence is, for so many of us, school, maybe you're classmates with somebody. Maybe you go to church and you're in Sunday school or whatever with somebody. And so you just develop a friendship that way, but you really didn't look at the landscape of options out there and go, yeah, I want you as my friend and not you. Like, it was just kind of because of proximity or where we are at. And some of us, even still today, have kind of that mode going on where we've just been friends with people for so long, and we just remain with them because they've always been our friends. Most of us have experienced the need for relationships in our lives, right? Like we've been in these situations where maybe we have lost friends or they've moved away, and we've realized that we have a hole in our life because we don't have friends near us anymore. We have this kind of pull to have people around us, no matter what that looks like. And it's not a bad thing for certain. Like, we are wired with the desire and the need to have people in our lives. We're designed to have this desire for community. I mean, from the beginning of time, right? Look at Genesis chapter 1. Like, God creates everything around us. He creates the earth. He creates the land, the waters, the animals, the plants, everything around us. And what does he say after each one of those? He says, it is good. But what does he say after he creates man? He says it's very good, but then he looks at man and he says, it's not good for what? It's not good for man to be alone. We are wired into us, this desire and this need for relationship. It's not a bad thing. We are designed to be in relationships. We're designed to be in relationships. And I think for some of us, like when relationships move away, we just crave it. We just crave it. And that desire has not left us since the beginning of time. We are designed for relationships and community. And what happens when we're gone from people too long? What happens when people move away from us and we have a void? Like, we start to mentally struggle, I think, at times, don't we? Like, we start to really kind of slip. We have just these struggles. We need people even in our lives. Like, even the most introverted people. Like, any introverts? No, because you don't want to raise your hand, right? I get it. No, some of you did. Like, introverts even crave relationships, don't we? I say we because I'm one of you. Like, we'll meet Never. But one of the things that we realize as we live out our lives, right, is that all relationships are not created equal, are they? All relationships, even the longest lasting relationships of our lives, are not created equal, and not all relationships are beneficial for us. And even further, not all relationships are appropriate for us. As we follow Jesus, not all relationships are equal or beneficial or are appropriate. And I think what we learn over time is that the people we are around and the people the people that we hang out with the most are the people that we become like. The more you spend time with people, you become like those people. So if you spend most of your time around God-loving, Jesus-following people with the values that they have and the priorities that they have and the habits that they have, you tend to become like them. And the opposite is just as true, right? And we know this. Like if we spend time with those who are very distant from God, who just don't care about God at all in their life, we tend to become like them as well. And so this morning we want to just unpack this a little bit together, talking about relationships. And we're not necessarily going to look at, here's a laundry list of all the things that you should avoid, right? We're not going to look at all the different types of relationships and all the characteristics and the personality types that we need to avoid, because frankly, we would be here all day doing that. But rather, we want to look at what relationships should be from a biblical foundation, from a biblical standpoint, and what we should strive to have in our life. So we're going to get our framework this morning from the book of Proverbs, mostly. Solomon, who wrote Proverbs, is considered to be one of, if not the wisest man outside of Jesus who walked the earth. And he passes on wisdom concerning relationships throughout the book of Proverbs, and we're going to certainly hone in on some of them this morning. So let's start here. This is one thing that Solomon said, Proverbs chapter 17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a difficult time. We're going to come back to this verse a little bit later on. But one of the reasons that we need relationships in our lives, and we know this, right, is for the times when we're struggling. For the times where we're going through a difficult time, a difficult season where we just have, things going on in our lives, and we need somebody there with us. We need somebody to walk through that with us. Friendships are there for the difficult times in our lives. Friendships are also there so that we can sharpen each other, so that we can make each other better. I would argue that it's not a very good friendship if that friendship doesn't make you a better person. If that friendship makes you a less, however you gauge that, a worse off person, that's not a very good friendship. So friendships should make us better. And we're told from Scripture, iron sharpens iron, that we sharpen each other. We help each other become better followers of Jesus. We rub off the edges of each other's character that needs to go over time. These areas that help us become more like Jesus. So we change when we are in relationships with other people. This is what Ecclesiastes says. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their efforts. For if either falls, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they can keep warm, but how can one person alone keep warm? And if someone overpowers one person, 2 can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Man, we can dive into that for like a whole message in and of itself. We're not going to today. But the idea is this: friends provide comfort. They provide companionship. They provide support for us during the times that we need it. These are all things that we need. We need all of these things in our lives. And Solomon, as he says this throughout Scripture, we have this desire in us to be in relationship, to have friends in our lives. But what Solomon is warning us, and what we're going to see, is we need to be careful. We need to be careful when we're choosing our friends. We need to be careful when we're kind of looking at the landscape of who we're in relationship with. We need to be careful about who we make friends with. Proverbs chapter 12 says this: a righteous man is what? Is careful in dealing with his neighbor, but the ways of the wicked lead him astray. Lead them astray. We need to be cautious when we're looking for our friendships, when we're looking for our friends. We need to be cautious because, like what we said, we become like those who we spend time with. We absorb like a sponge those that we spend time around. You take on the characteristics and the mindset and the attitudes and the priorities and the values of those that you spend time with. So as we're unpacking this together this morning, for some of us, we may need to step back for a moment and evaluate the landscape of the relationships that we have in our life. Some of us maybe, as we look at this, we may become aware that the people that we have surrounded ourselves with are drawing us further away from God rather than help us chase after Him. And you could realize that there are relationships in your life that are damaging your spiritual health. And you may need to evaluate that and possibly take a step back from those things. So we may realize that, but we may also realize as we're talking through this morning, we may look at these things and go, whoa, I am not living this out in my life. I am not living out these values, these biblical foundations for friendship. I'm not living this out. I am not maybe as good of a friend as I thought I was. And gosh, with God's help, I can become more like Him. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying that when people are difficult in our lives or sinful in our lives, or maybe they're a little bit further away from God than we are, I am not saying that we just turn our back to them. I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying that we just throw in the towel to anybody who doesn't fully claim to, be Christian and then live out these characteristics. I'm not doing that. Because if we waited for the perfect person, guess what? We wouldn't even make the list, right? We wouldn't even be on that list. So there is no perfect person. But what Proverbs is talking about here is talking about looking at the people who we have in our inner circle and evaluating whether or not they are truly desiring to help us move closer to Jesus, or maybe unintentionally they are pulling us away from Jesus. So this is what Proverbs is talking about. Those that are inside those closest circles, we need to be cautious. So let's look at these 5 characteristics of a good friend. First one is this: good friends encourage godly character. Good friends encourage godly character. This is what Proverbs chapter 13 says. It says, the one who walks with the wise will become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. You want to be wise or you want to be a fool? Anybody want to take the fool route? No. Not even the introverts are raising their hand for that one, right? Like here's the thing. If you ever spent any time with somebody who has a different accent or dialect than you for any amount of time, if you ever spent different, an amount of time in a different country or even a different part of the United States where they just talk a little bit differently, what happens over time? We start talking like them, don't we? It's not just the way that we talk, but it's even the words that we use, right? Is it soda or pop or soda pop? I will guarantee you in different parts of the country, there is a right and wrong answer to that. And I'm not sure what it is here exactly based on last week's experiment. I'm just saying. This is what happens. We start spending time with these people and we start becoming like them. And I think at some level we can look at this and we can go, well, that's a kid thing, though. Like in all the important areas, that's a kid thing. Kids can go and they can change groups of friends and it can drastically alter how they are, and that's a kid thing. But we adults, we are much more mature than that, right? Just because we are older does not make us immune to this happening in our lives. If you spend time with people who look down on, let's just say, the importance and the sanctity of marriage, if we decide I'm going to hang out with people who maybe they're married, maybe they're not, but they just don't really care about the wedding vows, about anything that they committed to. So maybe you start hanging out with people who begin to talk down or negative on their spouse, or they, kind of handle fast and loose the commitment that they made on that day, or maybe they're quick to make comments about other men or women that are walking around them at the time. We start to take that on. Nobody is immune from the reality that we are going to start to become like that if we're not careful. And throughout Proverbs, we see a couple characteristics show up. If you read through Proverbs, completely, you see a couple characters show up. You see one character who is the wise man. It's often referred to as the wise man does this. And the wise man throughout Proverbs is the one who is thinking through things. He's the one who is desiring wisdom in his life. He's searching after it. So you have the wise man show up in Proverbs, but you also have the fool, the foolish person that shows up. And the foolish person is really all of, it's not all of the things that the wise man is. Like, he thinks his way is best. He resists counsel. He thinks that he knows it all. He resists seeking God and God's wisdom. And Solomon says if you spend time with the fool, you're going to become like a fool. And so you need to be careful. You need to be careful. So the question is, are those in your inner circle seeking wisdom, or are they fools? Those people that you have intentionally put into your life, into the innermost part of your life, are they like the wise man, or are they like the fool? And what can you say about yourself? Are you like a wise man here, or are you like a fool? So, number one, good friends encourage godly character. Number two, good friends keep confidences. Good friends keep confidences. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 13 says, a gossip goes around revealing a secret, but a trustworthy person keeps a confidence. We know people like this, right? Like, let's just be real here. Like, we know people who fall into this. Like, this is the person who talks against other people in order to hurt them. This is the person who uses secrets that were entrusted to them in a way to spread gossip and rumors, or to simply use that against the person who shared it. This is the person who finds out, like, the one kid on the playground still wets his bed, and so what does he do? He tells the whole playground, right? This is the person who gets a hold of your junior high picture where you had the big hair, right? And then sends it to everybody in their contact list. You guys are laughing. I had more hair than this at one point. Hey, when I arrived at this church, I had more hair than this. That's all I'm saying, okay? Man. This is the person who takes the things that you tell them when you're in a vulnerable place, and they use that against you. And they take it and they spread it around to other people. This is what Proverbs chapter 20 says. It says, the one who reveals secrets is a constant gossip, right? Avoid someone with a big mouth. It's not me, it's Scripture. But I like that translation, right? Avoid somebody with a big mouth. We need to avoid these people. This is the person who just can't help themselves. Like, they get a piece of juicy information, right? And they just go around and they share it with everybody who they can. And you can tell, you can tell them, for instance, like, we're having a baby, but don't tell anybody. So what do? They post it on Facebook, right? As they're walking away from the conversation. But a good friend keeps confidences confident. A good friend knows and understands this was shared with me in confidence, and I'm going to do the best I can to keep it secret. Now, here's the thing. Now, I'm not saying that every single secret always should be kept in secret, right? Like, if you find out that your friend has a body in their trunk, I'm just saying, ask Siri and she'll tell you where to bury it. No, this is online. I'm saying this in confidence, okay? Dom, we're using sermon number 1 for the YouTube. Thanks. What I'm saying here, this is why I cannot get off my notes. What I'm saying here is that through the normal course of a friendship, right, in order for us not only to grow with each other, but hopefully the intention and the goal is for us to grow, yes, with each other and with God together. Like, we're chasing after Jesus together, and we're doing this together. Through the course of that, I need to feel comfortable, and you need to feel comfortable that you can come and you can share something with me. You have a struggle that you're going through. You have an issue that you're dealing with, and you haven't got it figured out yet. And you can share that with me knowing that I'm not going to go around and use it as a sermon illustration, right? Like, you need to be confident that what is shared within this relationship is going to stay in that relationship. And here's the thing, if you can't do that, if you know I've got this one friend that I can't tell anything to, I'm going to be honest, I don't think you have a good friend. And if you can't do that with your circle of people, then you will not be growing closer to Jesus that well together. And I'm going to argue you can't grow that close to each other either. One way to know if people are sharing the dirt that you may be telling them is to listen to the words that they tell you about other people. I mean, think about this. Like if you have a friend that is constantly just talking down or sharing secrets that other friends have shared with them, you can bet that they're also doing that to you as well behind your back. And here's the reality, like some of us need to pull back from those people. Some of us need to maybe distance ourselves a little bit from those people. And we need to ask the question too, am I that person? Sometimes I think that's the hardest thing to deal with, is the reality that I might be that person that can't be trusted. So, number 2, good friends keep confidences. Number 3, good friends respect space. Good friends respect space. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 17 says this, seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, otherwise he'll get sick of you and hate you. Again, not me. This is the Bible. So here's the thing. This at the surface, this sounds horrible when we're talking about relationships, right? Like we want to be in relationship and we want to have this understanding. I can come to your place. You can come to my place. We can show up in each other's lives. But I think we all know that one person, right? Who is always there. I think we know that one person who doesn't understand personal boundaries and personal space and doesn't understand the time when it's time to leave. And this has to be left up to the dynamics of the relationship, right? Like there's no blanket statement that covers everything here. But understand, like what the proverb is saying here is that good friends provide a little bit of space. And space is a good thing. Space is a good thing. Why? Because when I try and smother somebody without giving them space, ultimately what I'm saying is I don't feel like I can trust you to be by yourself. I don't feel like I can trust you and God to grow together without me present in that relationship. I don't trust you to make good decisions for yourself. Or maybe it could be a selfish thing. I just can't exist without you. I can't function without you. So we have to be careful. In the space, though, is the areas that we can grow. Like, when we're given space, we can grow. And it's not that we're growing further away from each other, but maybe we and God need to do a little bit of work together. And Solomon says here, allow space. Allow space to allow people to grow with God together. God does this with us too. Like we are given freedom in our lives to sometimes make mistakes. And God's not there tapping us on the shoulder all the time saying, nope, don't do that, nope, do that. Like he gives us space to make decisions and then deal with the consequences of it at times. It's called free will because he wants us to grow. And sometimes we need the space in order to grow with people around us as well. A good friend doesn't demand. A good friend doesn't smother. But at times when it's appropriate, it allows us room to grow. Number 4, good friends give honest counsel. Good friends give us honest counsel. Proverbs chapter 27. The wounds of a friend are trustworthy, but the kisses of an enemy are excessive. The idea of this is this. It's better to be hurt by a friend who gives us honest input rather than to be flattered by somebody who doesn't have your best interest at heart. It's better to, at times, receive hard information, hard truths by somebody that you love and you trust than it is for somebody just to be, flattering you because they want you to see them in a certain way. Like it's better for somebody to tell you in honesty that you should not, in fact, go audition for American Idol than it is for somebody to encourage you to go because they know that you, in front of millions of people, are going to be embarrassed because of it. A true friend is willing to tell you things that you need to hear. They're willing to point out areas that you maybe need to change, saying, like, here are some things that I see you doing. Like, man, here's some things that I know that you want to be about, but you're not. They're not in line with who Christ is, who you say that you're about. And if we jump down to verse 9 here in Proverbs 27, it says this, oil and incense bring joy to the heart, and the sweetness of a friend is better than self-counsel. I mean, this is it. Like, when we do this, it has to be both truth and kindness. It has to be truth and kindness. It can't just be one or the other. Like we see this in marriages a lot, right? Like either spouses interact in truth or they interact in kindness, both of those are dangerous, right? Like the person who interacts with their spouse in truth does so sometimes very, very harshly in ways that drastically hurt the recipient of it. And the same thing is true with the person who just wants to interact in kindness. Like sometimes, out of my kindness, I just don't want to say the hard, difficult things that need to be said, especially in marriages. And so we need both of these things present. A good friend is both of these things. They're both truthful and kind at the same time. We need to be honest and kind at the same time. And many times I have gleaned from this. Like many times I have had people who love me, who desperately just want to see me grow, call me out and say, Matt, this is not in line with who you say that you're about, or who you say that you are. Or this is not in line with the character of Jesus. And they say, for your betterment, for your sake, for your family's sake, for your ministry's sake, you need to know this. You need to see this. And I can receive that because we have a relationship. So there are people that I can trust because we have built that relationship. So good friends give honest counsel. Number 5, good friendships prove faithful in the midst of adversity. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 19. Trusting an unreliable person in a time of trouble is like a rotten tooth or a faltering foot. So earlier this year, back in February, I think it was, I got the opportunity to speak at a high school event up at Snowy Range. And it was kind of a weekend deal. We had some sessions, and we spent Saturday out on the slopes skiing. And I am not an avid skier, let's say that. Why are you laughing? Man, thought this was a safe place. So here's the thing, though. Like, I had the best day of skiing I've ever had on that day. Spent almost all day out there. It was fun. Felt like I got the hang of it. And my trouble happened when I decided I'm going to have one more run. Yeah. So we're going down this run. I don't know which one it is, but they're going around this corner, and it just got away from me, right? And, like, as I'm going down, like, my knee twists, and I'm like, oh, that's the knee. That's bad. So going down, and I fall down, and I get myself picked up, and my knee's hurting, and I start to kind of push on it a little bit, and it just won't hold. It won't hold me up. And so I decide I'm going to be the guy who finishes out this hill by walking to the lift. It's like the walk of shame, right? Walking to the lift, and I just went and checked it in, and so be it. And for like the next 2 weeks, I could not really put much weight on it. I certainly couldn't do anything like that because the knee was just not there to support me. And I think we find this, like, I don't know, maybe you have a foot that gives out sometimes, or the illustration with an apple, or with a tooth. Like maybe you bite into an apple, and you've got that bad tooth, and it just doesn't hold, or it hurts when you bite into it. This is what an unfaithful, a faithless person is like. Like when you get in a situation when you're in trouble, when you're in a situation where you need to talk to somebody, when you need a relation, somebody else there with you. This is the type of person where you call them up or you look around, and where are they? They're gone, right? They conveniently don't answer their phone or texts anymore. They're not at their house. They're not where they usually are. Like, they just can't be found. Like, it's in the place where, your marriage is struggling and you need somebody just to talk to, or your kids, or you're really having a hard time with your kids and you need some advice, or maybe your car broke down on the side of the interstate at Glendo and it's almost nighttime and you need somebody. I'm sorry, I'm getting into my own personal stuff here. Like, you need somebody to help pick you up, and you try and call and they're just not there. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17, we started with this. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for difficult times. A friend loves at all times. A friend doesn't just love when it's convenient for him, when it doesn't put him out a little bit, when it doesn't require a little bit. No, a brother loves at all times. The character of a godly friend is one who is there for the good times and for the bad. For the times where things are going good and for the times where maybe it requires something of them. Maybe when it requires them to give up of their time, give up of their resources, give up of something that they have in order to be there for their friend. A good friend is there in adversity as well as in good times. And we see this exemplified in the life of Jesus, right? Like we see, this is who Jesus is. Jesus is the perfect example of what a friend should be. You know this, right? Like while we were still sinners, Christ what? While we were still far from Jesus, Christ died for us. While we still had our back turned on God, Christ died for us. While we were far from him, he still decided, I'm going to give up something. I'm going to sacrifice something for you. John 15, greater love has no one than this, that he what? That he lay down his life for his friend. Jesus is the perfect example of what this looks like. And here's the thing for us, like if we are followers of Jesus, then we get the opportunity to live this out. Like it is our job to exemplify this in our lives. And so this leaves us really to have to ask, and you have to wrestle with two questions this morning. And the first one is this: who am I surrounding myself with? Who am I really surrounding myself with? Am I intentionally seeking out men and women who have these characters in their lives to be a part of my life? And if we don't intentionally do it, it will certainly not happen by accident. Like having all of these kind of people in our lives, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't necessarily fall into place. Like it requires me stepping out and saying, I'm going to seek people out in order to be this in my life. I'm going to intentionally surround these kind of people in my life. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all have people that we're close to in our lives who maybe we need to distance ourselves from a little bit. I think if we're honest, I think we have people in our lives who are not helping us get closer to Jesus. Rather, maybe intentionally or not, they are pulling us further away from him. They're certainly not helping it. And am I saying we need to cut them off? Absolutely not. I fully believe that God puts people in our lives who are far from him so that we have the opportunity and responsibility to point them to Jesus, right? Like that is our job. That's what we're called to. But if we are not careful, we can easily allow people like this to pull us away from Jesus because they don't have the same values as us, because they don't have the same priorities as us, because they don't live out the same life as we do. And so for some of us, maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a lifelong friend. Maybe it's one of those friends where you were neighbors when you were kids and you just stayed friends, but they are living a totally different life than you are. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's somebody who is close to you, where you just need to say, you know what, I love you, but I need to pull back a little bit because this relationship is not helping me follow Jesus. It's not helping my relationship with Jesus. And for the sake of that, because that is most important in my life, maybe we need to pull back a little bit. These are hard conversations. These are hard things to process through, but we get to the place to where if following Jesus is of utmost importance in our life, is growing closer to him, if it's utmost important in our life, then everything else has to fall secondary to it, including possibly the relationships that we have in our life. These are the hard conversations we need to have. Some of us need to maybe distance ourselves from some people while also leaning into relationships of other people. Some of us need to intentionally do work to put people like this, that have these 5 characteristics, into our lives more intentionally. We need to seek out people who are these things. And maybe we just need to go up to and ask, well, you person who exemplifies these characteristics, well, you go out for lunch with me. Can we go watch the game? Can we go shopping together? Can we go get our nails did or whatever? I don't know what that is like, but can you help me come work on my car or my house or my bathroom that I'm still working on 3 months later? Can we start building a relationship with each other? This is why I love care groups here so much. I am so thankful for my care group. Our care group has been this to us in times where we needed it, or else we wouldn't have made it. Our care group has been this to us, possibly unknowingly, when we felt like we were losing. We need these relationships in our lives. And so, for some of us, we don't have that it's not just going to chase after you. Sometimes we have to step out and we say, you know what, I need to get that. I need to plug myself into that. I need to seek out those relationships. You just need to do it. You need to step out and you need to do it. You need to ask somebody, hey, let's go out for lunch. Hey, can I join your care group? Hey, can we just meet? Second question that we need to ask here is this. Am I living these out myself? Am I living this out? Like, it's one thing to look around for this in other people. We also need to live this out for ourselves. And I don't need to push against this, right? Like, we get this. As we're working through this, like, we can look at these and go, yeah, I'm good maybe on that one, or man, I'm just not on that one. Like, I've dropped the ball on that, or you know, I'm just not at all trying on that one. And I get it, right? Like we can go through this and we can ask, do you encourage godly behavior in others? Like, you can answer that question for yourself. And do you keep the confidential things shared with you confident in the relationships that you have? And do you trust relationships enough to give people space, knowing that you don't always have to be there with them in every moment? Or are you the person that can give honest advice to others? Or are you just trying to be nice all the time to them? Or are you faithful in the midst of bad times in other people's lives? Like, we can answer these questions for ourselves and understand, like, none of us are this all of the time, right? None of this are the perfect example of this 100% of the time. But generally, are we living these things out? Are we this in our lives? Are we intentionally making an effort to be these things in our lives? Or do we need to consciously make an effort to improve some of these areas from time to time? That's the tension that we have to work through. That's the tension that we have to deal with. Am I seeking good friends to be around me? Am I intentionally seeking people who have these characteristics to be in my life so that we can chase after Jesus together? And am I making an effort to be a good friend to other people around me? Church, let us be people who pursue relationships that help us pursue Jesus together. Let that be what we're about, yeah? Amen. Heavenly Father, I'm thankful for relationships. I'm thankful not only for the time that we have to gather here to worship and to open your word in this context, but I'm thankful for the opportunities that we get to sit in each other's homes, that we get to go out for lunch, that we get to do work in garages, that we get to, whatever it is, with other believers, other followers of you. Father, I pray that we would be, honestly, because of the work that you're doing in our lives and in our hearts, evaluating the relationships that we have and asking the difficult question, do I need to distance myself because they're not on the same trajectory as I am? And then, God, let us turn to ourselves and ask, am I living this out? And give us the strength and the courage to know the answer to that and then to act on it accordingly. God, thank you for Jesus. Thank you for the perfect example that he was in our life and in everybody's life, and how we can look to him for this. God, thank you that he went to the cross for us. I pray all this in his name. Amen.